Take one example of one of these recent disasters that you feel like the response effort was not as efficient or as effective, and just kind of talk about that. I mean,
I think every response faces has its own challenges and its own face of challenges. When you work international, the first challenge is you're working with a foreign government. They must invite you in. You must, and so in that case, trying to figure out how do you work with that government. What rules do you fall under? Are you, for example, in Haiti, we're working debris management. Well, we have our own set of EPA, environmental rules and legislation laws that we have to follow. Do you overlay United States law on top of a country, or their laws? What if they don't have those laws in place? What's my responsibility as a steward of this one of our government and our assets, but also steward of just the environment? So we have to balance that. So that's always a challenge. I would say in Haiti, that challenge was manifested in that the Port-au-Prince area was destroyed, and so most of your physical government facilities were destroyed, and a lot of the infrastructure, not only the physical infrastructure, but the governance infrastructure was destroyed, and so that presented a problem. And that's highlighted by it is an island, and so you have limited points of entry. You have ports, both air and sea, but those were also damaged. So I think, while I would say it was not a failure, but it is an area that we have to work at. Is how do you quickly gain access to an impacted area, working with that government, be invited in an area which has damaged infrastructure.
So in terms of, I know that you've mentioned some pre-planning. Maybe this is not exactly what you had in mind, but could you think about in a pre-planning type of activities that you could have done, or not you personally, but that could have been done in the humanitarian response community that would help mitigate those kind of challenges?
Well, I think the area that we have to work on is we're good at fighting the last response. And so we will probably look at Haiti, and then over the next 6 to 18 months work diligently in the Caribbean area and South America. Or we'll focus hard on earthquakes and response to earthquakes. And so I think we have to be careful not to fall in that trap and look holistically. And so I think the area that we have to work is our partnerships, our networks. One of my bosses told me, Frank, you need to make friends before you need a friend. So our job is to make friends early and make friends often. And how do you do that? Well, you network, and it's all about the people. And so you have to go out in these different regions of the world, assess the environment in which they live in, assess the environments that may be impacted by natural or man-made disasters, and then build those networks early on. And so I think that's an area we have to work, is building networks and friendships across the international community, across NGOs, our non-government organizations, and across our government organizations. And often there's barriers in there, both physical barriers from physical computer barriers, to just barriers in terms of our relationships or culture.
So in terms of Haiti, I mean, I know that there are a lot of logistical challenges, especially in the very beginning. As you said, it's an island, and most of the points of entries were destroyed. Can you think of any, or do you have in mind any pre-planning type of activities, or long-term activities that could have been done to ease those logistical challenges that happened in the very beginning?
That's a tough one in terms of pre-planning. Again, I think we can't.
And not necessarily just your organization, but in general the whole community.
In the international community, I don't think you can plan for every event. It's just too tough. There's too many countries, too many hazards out there. But what you have to have is a general construct that you're willing to work under. Some of the challenges early on in Haiti, who was in charge? What's the Haitian government? But who's in charge of the response? And so coordinating amongst the first responders from all these nations. And so I think the area we have to work hard on is a construct where the international community can quickly come together in support of a nation and get over some of the biases and some of the cultural differences, and in some cases the egos that come with different cultures and different countries and different organizations. And so I think that's the area we have to work is building. I go back to the networking and partnership. We got to have these in place before the event happens. Would that have helped in Haiti? Yes. Did we have a specific Haitian plan, we as the international community, to support Haiti for an earthquake? No. Again, just too tough to do. But we do have to build on networks and relationships and partnerships prior to the event. I think that's one area that the international community at large has to work on. And it's not just, it doesn't fall on the backs of one country, it doesn't fall on the backs of one international organization like the UN, but it has to be regional organizations and bottom-up organizations and non-governmental organizations that come together and that builds this framework and this fabric of response and recovery. And all of us have a piece, a thread of this fabric. We've got to weave this fabric together so that when we do respond, it's a complete blanket of support. And so that's an area I think we have to work hard at.
Were you the ones who actually rebuilt the airport in the first 48 hours so that it's operational?
The U.S. government had a large part of it, the Air Force specifically, in support of Southcom getting the airport. But again, as you look at the airport, who owns the airport? The government of Haiti does. And so you have to go in and start asking permissions. How do you maintain or execute airport operations safely to land all the humanitarian assistance that's coming in? Is that a U.S. lead? Is that a French lead? Is that a Haitian lead? Who decides? And that's that kind of that friction early on and trying to figure out, because it's a big safety issue, and then also whose rules and regulations we fall under. And luckily, most airports fall under international governments in terms of this. There's international norms for an airfield operation.
And of course, I know that everybody kind of knew that the U.S. government went and helped to make it operational. Yes. And then also, I think it also came in and kind of did allocating of space and landing and so on, so that everybody could start landing. But on the other hand, in the international press, there were a lot of reports in terms of, you didn't let this plane land and that plane land and all that. So which is, it's just and that goes to show that what you're saying is so correct. Yeah. And
that goes to that building that networking of partnership. Now, Haiti is in our backyard. It is part of the Americas. And so we would hope that America would take a strong lead there. As we look around the world and as you respond as a government, there are certain areas that you want to respond in monetarily because that's the best fit. But when the event is in your backyard and it's part of the Americas, you want to make sure that America, as one of the countries in this hemisphere, provides that support, and the face of America is down there. But it is a challenge, because you're working with a government that has been destroyed physically in terms of its infrastructure, and it's trying to rebuild and gain some semblance of governance. At the same time, you have lots of governments coming to them. We're here to help. We're here to help. And sometimes they want to take a tactical pause and just say, "Stop. Let us catch our breath. Figure out who's alive, who's still capable of providing governments, and then start their support."
So when we start thinking about the medium term and the long term response, what do you think is your organization's role will be, and how long do you think you will be there?
I'm not sure on the duration. There was a couple meetings, one in Canada already, in terms of looking at donor nations to support Haiti. I think the government of Haiti has to figure out what do they want from a long-term recovery aspect. This is a great opportunity in a very serious, in terms of an event, and an unfortunate event with significant loss of life. But it does present the country of Haiti an opportunity to look for its future and say, where do we want to go as a country, both from a physical standpoint of how we want our country to be built and rebuilt, what infrastructure do we need, what type of construction codes we fall under, but also it's a time for social rebuilding. As you look at the rebuilding of Haiti, there has to be an element to say, who are we and what, from a Haitian standpoint, and how do we want our country rebuilt? Again, not just physically, but socially. I think they have to look holistically. From the Corps of Engineers, we do have technical expertise in certain areas. Debris management is one of those areas, and we're working closely with the government of Haiti right now on developing a national debris plan to, one, manage debris, but also be good stewards of the environment. How can we reuse that debris to reduce landfill locations and reduce the impacts on its environment, both on the island, but off island. And so I think that's an area we'll work closely with them. Public infrastructure, I think, is another area that we have that we'll work closely with the Haitian government. Again, it depends on where they want to go. Will the World Bank take a lead? The UN, who's had a presence there since about '94, And so we're working with the international community, the government of America, is not just the Corps of Engineers, to figure out what is the long-term plan, who has lead on it, how do we as a government, and then specifically the Corps of Engineers, support that plan. Is it a World Bank plan, a UN plan, all in support of the Haitian government? But I think this will be a long-term recovery operation.
So how do you overall measure the quality or evaluate the quality of the response?
I think it comes to people. I mean, the job of any responder is to bring back a sense of normalcy to the population. And what is a sense of normalcy? Clothes on my back, food in my stomach, a roof over my head, a sense of security that my family's taken care of, a sense of government that a governance that I'm being taken care of. That's what, to me, when I think of a sense of normalcy, what does normalcy mean to me? And so I think you have to measure it in terms of the people. Do they feel that their normal life has returned? Do they have a sense of normalcy, or do they have a prolonged sense of this disaster is looming? It's not being, we're not personally being taken care of. Our needs are not being taken care of. And so our job is to reduce that time in which they're in that heightened state of fear and concern, to bring back that sense of normalcy.
How do you calculate that time, though? I mean, do you do any measurements of it took so many days to bring something?
I think there are.
I mean, I'm just wondering, like the Corps of Engineers. I mean, are there any measurements or evaluation that you do?
We do. I mean, there are some physical numbers that we try to achieve. First responders out the door in X number of hours. The first roofs installed. Water distributed. First, we call them points of distribution for water and ice and commodities. How long does it take us to set those up? How long does it take to get power back into key facilities? Everything from first responder facilities to shelters to medical facilities, nursing homes. So we do measure ourselves in those metrics. We work that closely with, for example, in domestic ways. We work those closely with the states, and each of the states have their own emergency management system in place. We work closely with states and local governments, along with, of course, FEMA, who we support. FEMA is the lead for our domestic response. So we have those physical measurements, but again, it goes back to people. When you're walking through a devastated area, when you're walking through Fargo, North Dakota, am I proud to wear my Corps of Engineers shirt, or am I hiding my logo because I think they're mad at me? I mean, that's after Katrina, would you walk down the streets of New Orleans with a FEMA shirt on, or with the Corps logo shirt on? I think that's a measurement. I mean, how successful you are, and frankly, after Katrina, I probably would have been very nervous about wearing my Corps of Engineers shirt, walking downtown the French quarters. I think a lot of the both state and federal responders would say the same thing if they were being honest with themselves, and the local responders. That is a case where, as you look at all levels, individual preparation, we as individuals in this country have a responsibility to be prepared for incidents. And so from individual to a local, county, to a state, to a federal, I think all of us have issues to bear that we have to fix, just looking at post-Katrina. So I think, again, we have physical measurements, but really it's what do the people think? What were their expectations met? And do they have this sense of normalcy that I can continue my life, or is it a prolonged sense of worry and dread that we're still in this natural disaster, a man-made disaster?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you were to pinpoint a couple of things that went really well in Haiti, let's say, what would you say?
I think a couple of things. One was communications across the responding community. Communications with the government of Haiti, I think the Department of State, and other national agencies from outside the U.S., the French, Brazil, and other countries, their ability to quickly make contact with the government of Haiti to establish what are the needs, how they want us to help, and then mobilizing inside of it, and specifically for the U.S. response. The President quickly identified USAID as lead, as a lead agent for this, and underneath USAID, OFDA, Office of Foreign Disaster Assistance. Then the relationship as that flows down from the national level to country level, the ambassador, and in this case, from the military side, our Southern Command is the command that's responsible for this region of the world for the U.S. So that marriage between the ambassador and the Southern Command in terms of working with the government and identifying where the needs are and what needs to be met. I think that went well. Can it always be improved? Yes. Communications is always tough. But I think that went well. I mean, we quickly knew what our missions would be, and specifically from the Corps of Engineers. As we started to receive missions and queries from the USAID and how we could help, we had pre-positioned L&Os in USAID. I have a gentleman, Bruce Elliott, very experienced in both the military. He's a retired colonel, but also has many years of experience in strategic planning and networking. He's a people person, and so he's my liaison officer at USAID. We just put him there about a year ago, but in that short 12 months, he's made the relationships and the networks so that when this happened, we had a natural conduit into USAID to begin to understand where they needed help, USAID from us, and where we could help. And so I think that's a success. I mean, it wasn't a bit of luck maybe that we had in position 12 months ago, but we're working hard, across from the Corps' perspective, putting liaison officers, posting them in those areas that we think we can provide support. We have them in FEMA, a full-time person at FEMA, USAID, Department of State, OSD. And then we have them throughout the world working with all the different combatant commanders so that when these events happen, again, make a friend before you need a friend. These people live and work every day in these offices. They share the same office space, the same water coolers, the same dining facilities, and they have social gatherings at night. So they know each other. And so I think that was a plus for us. That we were positioned well with relationships and networks to help just to make sure everyone's aware of where we can help and what we could do to facilitate the response to Haiti.
So let's talk a little bit briefly on the long-term development and long-term events. And I think you've mentioned that you're doing particularly these kind of things in Africa.
Yes, ma'am.
In water safety and availability, I suppose. Could you tell a little bit about the challenges, the different challenges that are faced by these kind of long-term developmentally?
Well, the biggest challenge is, I don't think it's just in America, I think worldwide, we are fairly focused at the near term as a population. It's not that we don't think long term, but we want immediate results. You want to be able to invest and have immediate results from that investment. In terms of long term, either from a long term reconstruction effort post an event or just long-term planning and preparing so that when an event happens, you can mitigate as quickly as possible. I think that's the biggest challenge. People want immediate results. They want to see the investment, and they want to see the results of the investment. So from a U.S. standpoint, that's time and dollars. Two of the most precious things that we have right now is in terms of how much time, personal time, how much human capital are we willing to allocate toward a long-term event, and how much fiscal dollars are we willing to put against that to achieve an end state. We're lucky in that I think we've had a longer-term view. I think we've learned not only as our nation, but all nations and all responders have learned that if your sole mitigation to an event is a fast response, then you're behind before the event happens. I mean, if all you are betting on is that I will respond quickly and professionally, and that's how I'll mitigate an event, we've missed the mark. And so I think we've learned that to mitigate properly, you have to have planning ahead of time. You have to have a very, very dynamic and quick response, but you also need long-term recovery. So I think we understand now that there are, I'll say, 3 phases of the operation, but you have to plan, you have to respond quickly, but then you have to recover long-term. So I think that's an area, is that short-term mentality that we have to get over. I think we have gotten it over in a lot of cases. I think Africa is a great example. We've been working in Africa for years now in terms of water surety and water resilience. And as you look across the different magazines and academia and institutions, there's lots of discussions on what are the next wars, what will be fought over. One of the topics, food and water, energy. And so I think we have to look long term in those areas. I think Africa is a great example, working with the Millennium Corporation, doing long term water resilience and water surety programs.
how can we educate the public and the donors and the governments to invest in these kind of more long-term, what should be the message, or how should you be measured, so that actually the measurement includes the long-term efforts?
Yeah, that's a good question. You said no hard questions.
Sorry.
Gosh almighty. That's a tough one. It is. I think it's just a recognition that the world is one large community, in that we have many different nations, but we all have a responsibility to each other, and understanding that the responsibility sometimes forces you to go outside your borders, and as leading nations, those who are postured both with technical skills like America has, monetary capabilities like America has, but also global reach that America has. You have to be willing to accept that responsibility and to execute it. But it is a tough one. I mean, I don't know if there's one thing you can do. I think the global communications and the global networking amongst young college students. I mean, you look at Georgia Tech, and this morning we heard about the many different networks that Georgia Tech has throughout different countries. I think those kind of things help when you start interacting at that level, at the collegiate level, in academia, but also in our young citizens, so they come up with this sense of, you still have a national sense. I mean, we're Americans, but we also have a sense that we have a piece and a place to play in this world. I think that helps. But there is always a friction there between national needs and international needs.
This kind of emergency response, disasters, and so on is a challenging field to be in. Why do you do it personally?
I think part of it's personal satisfaction. I enjoy the military. I love what I do. And I think some people don't realize just how many humanitarian assets or how many humanitarian efforts that the military executes. The military is about people. We're a people organization. Our job is to defend the peoples of America. But in that endeavor, we have the great opportunity to work with other nations. So I remember some of my first ones, the Ecuadorian earthquake of 1986, I think was my first humanitarian response, 86 or 87, the earthquake in Ecuador. But as we live and work with other countries, I lived in Germany for 6 years. I had a great opportunity to work in Southeast Europe, Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Fyrom, Kosovo, and working to rebuild orphanages, schools, ambulantes, bridges, roads. You just get this sense of completeness that you're giving back something.